Now, this is the time actually most of the schools are closed. Students are available, they might be finding something interesting.
Okay, so we are now live. So at the outset, I, Dr. Pooja from CSIR, CSIO Chandigarh, welcome all dear students, teachers, and other viewers from different parts of the country in the CSIR Jigyasa webinar series, Let's Talk Science, What, Why, and How. I also take this opportunity to congratulate you all for National Technology Day being celebrated today in our country. This day is a significant milestone in the history of India's technological innovations and advancements, as this day marks the successful test of nuclear bomb in Pokhran in 1998. Another achievement is the flight of Hansa 3, India's first indigenous aircraft. I would like to mention that Hansa 3 was developed by one of the CSIR labs, National Aerospace Laboratories. The third major achievement on this day was the last test fire of Trishul missile by DRDO. So this day is celebrated every year to honor the architect of such innovations and to further motivate the young minds, scientists, and those having passion about technology. In this relevance, CSIR also has taken initiative to encourage the young generation for science and technology through its Jigyasa platform. Today, we are fortunate to have with us Professor Shekhar C. Mande, Director General CSIR, to talk about can technology combat COVID-19. So as per our format, we will have 20 to 25-minute discussion with our speaker related to the topic. Meanwhile, the students and teachers, they can post their questions through the YouTube chat box. I will try my best to put most of them to our speaker within the given time frame. So before we start the webinar today, it's our pleasure to have with us Dr. Chakrabarti, Head HRDG, to give his remarks about Jigyasa and this webinar series, and also introduce our honorable speaker to the audience. Professor Chakrabarti, please.
Thank you, Pooja, and thank you and the entire Jigyasa team to take such excellent initiative. I am told that this is the 7th Jigyasa webinar in the series. We also had some excellent speakers earlier. They generated enthusiasm among the school students. That is the philosophy of Jigyasa program, which CSIR has been running for the last 2 years, where we try to connect the students with our scientists. That was the philosophy of Jigyasa. And Dr. Devi Prasad from the headquarters also was instrumental in taking it to such a huge program it has now become, because I'm told that about 300,000 students from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Navodaya Vidyalaya, and state government schools got this opportunity to get connected with CSIR scientists over the last 2 years period. The number is not small, but the challenges are many. And especially during this pandemic situations, we are using the internet extensively to really have this connect continues. And we are privileged to have Dr. Shekhar Mande, the DG CSIR, with us today. And although he can speak in both languages, but we have discussed that he will continue speaking in English, but wherever need arises, we will move to the Hindi. But it depends on the responses what Pooja receives from the students. I must congratulate all the Jigyasa nodals in all 37 CSIR labs. You made it possible, and now you have to take it forward. So I would not like to take much of your time. And Dr. Shekhar Mande, I would like to request you to start your talk, the 7th webinar series, Can Technology Combat COVID-19? And the philosophy and the background behind this COVID-19, because you have been our science warrior in this COVID fight. Thank you. Thank you very much. We can request formally, Pooja.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Chakrabarti. So we all are eagerly waiting to hear our speaker. So I now request Professor Shekhar Mande to talk about today's topic, Can Technology Combat COVID-19? Welcome, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद पूजा और चक्रवर्ती जी। सभी प्यारे छात्र छात्राओं, आज के नेशनल टेक्नोलॉजी डे के शुभ अवसर पर आप सभी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन। All my dear students across the country, hearty felicitations, hearty greetings to all of you on the occasion of National Technology Day. As the situation is very serious across the world about COVID-19, and therefore our celebrations are a bit somber, but nonetheless, we should learn to celebrate our achievements, what the scientists and technologists have done. And therefore, as every year, 11th May is being celebrated as National Technology Day across the country. Pooja told you already that three very important things that happened on 11th May 1998. Number one, there's Operation Shakti, in which India successfully demonstrated nuclear explosion in Pokhran second time. That was Operation Shakti that was carried out by Department of Atomic Energy. Number two, the Trishul missile was successfully tested by DRDO on the same day. And number three, the Hansa 3 flight, which was completely indigenously designed flight, that took a test flight on that particular day. And that actually, as Pooja told you, it was the flight that was designed by CSIR, the National Aerospace Laboratory, that took flight that day. So in CSIR, we are very proud that one of the achievements of CSIR is now nationally celebrated as National Technology Day. So hearty felicitations to all of you on this particular occasion. What I want to do to tell you is about COVID-19. Many of you have been reading, hearing about it from all different sources, from press, from media, from your friends, from your parents, and everyone. But I want to put things in the perspective. And if there is any information that is not being percolated correctly, perhaps we'll try to correct that in my next half an hour talk. So COVID-19, as many of you know, is caused by a virus. This virus, its name is Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. So SARS-CoV-2 is the correct name that is given to there's a correct name of this particular virus. There was a SARS-CoV-1, of which there was a pandemic about 6-7 years ago, but that was restricted to countries like Taiwan and South Korea and so on and so forth. This is the second type of that. Now it's called a coronavirus because its shape is spherical, it's a sphere, and there are spikes which come out of it. And therefore it looks like a crown of a king. And therefore, because it looks like a crown, it's called corona. Coronavirus's coat is mostly very oily. In biological terms, we call it lipids, but it suffices to say that it's very oily, very greasy core that it is. And the spikes that come out are the proteins which are there, and we'll talk about a little bit about them. Now the oily, because it's oily, it sticks to surfaces. And many of you would have realized that when you eat oily food, right? आप लोग जब oily कुछ खाते हो, जैसे पराठा खाया या और कुछ खाया जिसमें butter है, जिसमें तेल है, and then you go and wash your hands with water, that oil doesn't get very easily out of your hand. It remains stuck there. So what do? You go to the bathroom and then use soap to wash the water, soap to wash the oil. करते हो या नहीं करते हो? So to wash oily stuff from your hand, you always wash it with soap. And the soap has detergent, and detergent dissolves the oil. And therefore, if detergent is used, it can dissolve the oily substances. Just like that, soap also dissolves the outer coat of the virus. The virus is very oily, very greasy, and it sticks to your hands. And when it sticks to your hands, if you wash with soap properly, it will get washed off. By simple water, it will not get washed off. Only with soap, it will get washed off. But there's another problem. If the hands were touched somewhere, and that particular object has coronavirus, and if you put that hand in your mouth or in your nose, the virus will get transferred to your nose or mouth, and you will get infected. And therefore, it is important that you keep washing your hands regularly with soap every now and then. If you touch your hand with some table, chair, doorknobs, or wherever, you should actually keep washing your hands because virus may be sticking to those surfaces and it may get transferred to your hand. And the only way to get rid of it from your hand is by washing your hands with detergent. The second thing that happens is that if you come in contact or you come close to a person who is infected, a person who is infected but doesn't show any signs, that person is still breathing out and breathing in, right? That person is exhaling and inhaling. When that person exhales, that air contains small droplets, and the droplets also have coronavirus embedded in them. But these droplets don't carry too far in air. They can go at the most 2 feet, 3 feet in air. And therefore, it is recommended that if you keep at least 6 feet between any person on the street or wherever you go while playing, then the chance that you will get that droplet inhale yourself is very low. And therefore, it is important that you keep maintaining distance of at least 6 feet between two persons. So you reduce your chance that another person who is infected might infect you through that particular droplet out of them. When a person coughs, if a person like this, then that person also exhales virus into a droplet. And these droplets also travel not too far, about 3 feet or something. And therefore, it is recommended that you maintain about 5 to 6 feet from any other person, keep washing your hands, and the chances that you will contract corona is very less. So please follow these instructions that you will not get corona. Now, when we talked of coronavirus, I said that the surface is very greasy, very oily, but there are also spikes that come out of this. Now, these spikes are important because these spikes are actually looking for certain place to bind. And if they bind to, let us say, human cells, to a particular receptor to human cell, it binds to human cell takes it up, and then it goes inside the cell, right? The protein of the virus binds to cell surface protein of human cells in our own body. When we inhale the virus, the cell surface receptor binds to these proteins, and then it is taken inside, what we call as endocytosis. It goes inside the cell and then gets released in the cell, inside the cell. If this is a cell, it binds to the corona, comes inside and releases it. What it releases is the genetic material of the virus. Now, many of you would have heard that the genetic material of all living organisms, right? All living organisms like plants, animals, human beings, bacteria, is a molecule called DNA. Okay. Just like that, certain viruses also have RNA as a genetic material. So DNA is a genetic material which is very common for plants, animals, bacteria, molluscs, humans, chimpanzees, everyone. But RNA is the genetic material of this virus. So virus releases its RNA into human cell. And then this RNA or the virus machinery takes over the complete human cell. That cell of our own body now starts making number of copies of the virus in itself. So one virus particle that goes in our cell, that cell now can make thousands of copies of this virus. And then they burst the cell open, come out of that particular cell. Now, one virus which entered our body already have 1,000 copies. Those 1,000 copies invade 1,000 cells of our body. And each of those 1,000 cells now make another 1,000 copies of the virus. So this process continues. And very soon, the body fails to recognize that you have such an onslaught of a pathogen in our body. Such a big onslaught of something which has come outside has taken over the machinery of our cells and making a copies of itself. So body actually confuses, and therefore body launches a very, very strong immune response against that, what we call as a cytokine storm. And as a consequence of the cytokine storms, our lungs, they actually start getting filled up with liquid. And that liquid essentially eventually gives rise to a condition, what we call as pneumonia. In pneumonia, the capacity of our lungs to absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide reduces because the air that comes into does not go to all the places in the lung. That goes only to limited places and comes out, because the rest of the place is filled up with this liquid in the lungs. And that's where the person starts having breathing difficulties. Person starts breathing very heavily like that. So that the heavy breathing is a consequence of what we call as the cytokine storm in the body, and the reduced capability of the lungs to absorb oxygen and the reduced capability to release carbon dioxide. And eventually, God forbidden, that person succumbs to the disease. Now, that's a very unfortunate outcome of the disease. But however, I would like to assure you that most people, about 80, 85, 90% people, are sufficiently competent to fight with the virus themselves. Most of us has our body has immune system which is very, very competent. You know, our body is remarkable. It can detect what is our own self. It can detect what is not our own self. And if the body recognizes that something is not our own self, body launches an immune attack on that thing. And all the immune cells attack on this particular what is not our own cells or an external pathogen, and then gets rid of it. Our bodies If they are healthy, the bodies can get rid of them. So it is important lesson that body must be very healthy. A healthy person will always respond very well to infection, and therefore that healthy person will not even show signs of having infected with corona. That person may not even get fever. That person may not develop even cough. That person may not even get deep breathing problems or something like that. So healthy body is an important aspect to maintain yourself immune from the virus. And how do you make healthy body yourself? You eat well, you sleep properly, you make sure that you don't eat bad food, and so on and so forth. And if you follow these particular practices, you exercise regularly. If you do this, you remain healthy and you will not get corona. So that is actually the things that doctors recommend: healthy body, washing your hands, and maintaining distance from people. Social distancing is what actually is recommended if you want to fight corona very successfully on your own. Now let us see why it happens. How viruses like this all of a sudden come into being. Now we know for time immemorial, we know for thousands of years, we know probably for 15,000 years, we know probably 25,000 years that infectious diseases are there and they have always killed human beings. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, they somehow kill human beings. There is evidence in literature that diseases like tuberculosis existed even 15,000 years ago. Some people who have dissected the mummies from Egypt or Peru, which are about 7 or 8,000 years ago, show bone deformities which are related to tuberculosis. So these infectious diseases have existed in human beings forever. And the infectious diseases have a very peculiar characteristics. They can jump from organism to organism. They can go in birds, they can go in mammals, they can go in rats, they can go in pigs, and from there they can go into human beings. So the infectious diseases, the viruses particularly, can jump from organism to organism. A process what we call as zoonosis. And that's what you would have heard typical term like bird flu which came from birds. You would have heard swine flu, the flu which came from pigs. So like that, the current flu is believed to have come from bats. So virus was there in the bats primarily, it was infecting bats and it got mutated and somehow it became, now the host became, instead of bat, the host became human beings. And that's how the virus evolved, and we have to make sure that we kill the virus. Now, once we know that there is a pandemic, the pandemic means a large section of the population around the world is infected with the virus. Now, how do you control it? For any disease, how do you control a disease? What are the strategies to control the disease? We rely upon three principal arms to control any disease. The first arm is prevent a disease, either by wellness or by vaccination, and we'll talk about that. The second arm is diagnose the disease early, and the third arm is to develop drugs against that particular disease. These are the three principal things by which you can fight any disease that you can name. Any disease that you can name, be it cancer, be it tuberculosis, or malaria, common cold, flu, whatever, any of these three things are actually very effective weapons to fight the disease. Wellness we already talked about. We'll talk about vaccination. What happens is that the vaccines, if they're injected into our body, or if you take them orally, some of the vaccines, they prepare your body for that particular pathogen. You would have heard of polio vaccine that is taken typically orally. The oral polio vaccine, if you take it, it generates some sort of antibodies in the body, and these antibodies are a part of our immune system. And if by any chance polio virus enters your body is already prepared to fight the polio virus. So all these antibodies attack the virus and get rid of it immediately. That's exactly how vaccines work. And some of the most successful examples of vaccines are, for example, the smallpox vaccine. You would have heard that there was smallpox several years ago for humanity, but we have gotten rid of smallpox now. That's a very effective vaccine. You would have heard that polio is almost extinct from India now. So these are the very good examples of vaccines that we have developed in the past, and even now we are trying to do that. Against corona, we are trying to do the same things, very similar things. We are trying to see whether we can take coronavirus, you inactivate it so that it will not infect human being, but the shape and surface looks exactly like the coronavirus that infects us. So the virus looks exactly the same, but cannot infect the cells anymore. And then allow the human body to generate antibodies against it. It is called inactivated virus. Or you can take the RNA from the virus and inject it in the body and ask the body that whether it can generate antibodies against that RNA. Or you can take one of the surface proteins and inject into the body, because the surface protein is not infective, the whole virus is infective. So we can prepare our body for vaccination by doing multiple things like that. What CSIR is doing is that CSIR is working on antibodies that our bodies generate from a recovered patient and generate what is called as a monoclonal antibody and try that as a vaccine. That's number one. The second aspect to treat a disease, as I said, is diagnosis. Any disease, if diagnosed early, can actually give us a good lead to fight that particular disease. You would have heard that in cancers, if you diagnose cancer early, there's a good chance that a person might survive. That a person may not die of cancer. And therefore, it's very important that we diagnose all the diseases early on. So corona also is very important, that some people can be carriers of the virus but have not developed any symptoms. We must diagnose them that these are carriers. A perfectly looking healthy person might be affected by corona and has not developed antibodies in his or her body. Now, there is a carrier, what we call as asymptomatic carrier. That person does not have any symptoms of the disease, but a person still carries the virus in his or her body. We have to detect those people. Who are these people? And then we must actually diagnose that these people are there, and therefore they should be isolated. But they should not spread corona to other people who are not infected. And that's exactly what diagnosis would do. And there are many different ways of diagnosis. The standard, gold standard in the field, what is called RT-PCR. RT-PCR is essentially what it does. It converts the RNA of the virus into a DNA. All right, by a reaction called what is called as the reverse transcriptase. There's a process in biology called transcription that makes DNA into RNA. A reverse transcription makes RNA into DNA. Now, during reverse transcription, you can make a DNA. And this molecule of DNA, you can make multiple copies of this DNA very rapidly by a reaction what is called as the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR. A PCR, every cycle of PCR, you have to go through multiple cycles. Every cycle make one molecule of DNA into 2, 2 molecules into 4, 4 molecules into 8, 8 molecules into 16. And therefore, at the end of 25 or 30 cycles, you have 2 to the power 25 or 2 to the power 30 molecules of DNA. And the DNA molecules are not very difficult to detect. We can detect them using certain fluorescent label. They fluoresce in light, and therefore it is called as the quantitative real-time PCR. It's also called reverse transcript-based PCR, but also called quantitative PCR because you can detect how many molecules of DNA are there in the solution. And that's the gold standard of detecting this virus in our body. So what doctors typically do, they take a swab from your nose, they put a stick, insert a stick into your nose, take a swab, put that into a solution, and do this RT-PCR reaction and find out whether your body has that RNA or not, viral RNA or not. CSIR has been involved in doing something similar, but using paper-based diagnosis. CSIR lab has generated a paper-based diagnosis in which you have paper strips, in which you actually coat a probe on the piece of paper. On a strip, you coat a probe which has the RNA. This RNA is complementary to the viral RNA. When it comes into contact with the viral RNA, it hybridizes. Both of them come together and form like this. Once it hybridizes together, you can detect that by some fluorescent probe, or we can detect that by some reaction in which the part of the paper on which this is coated, this particular RNA is coated, will show a different color. So if virus is there, you'll get a different color band, typically a black band. If the virus is not there, you will not get a black band. And there's a test that our lab in Delhi, the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, they have developed this particular test. This is called a paper-based test. It's very similar to the pregnancy test that we use. A simple dipstick type of paper, and if you dip it in a solution, that band develops. If the band is there, the person is affected. Band is not there, person is not affected. So that is diagnosis. The third aspect is drugs, right? As I said, vaccines, diagnosis, and drugs. So drugs, there are multiple ways that we can do. You can find a new drug against corona. Now, finding a new drug is extremely challenging. Finding a new drug is extraordinarily challenging. A new compound which affects a surface receptor of a virus molecule, so that that surface receptor of the virus molecule cannot bind to the human cell, right? You can design a small molecule, that affects the surface protein of corona. If it affects the binds to surface protein of the corona, the surface of the protein of the corona which used to bind to the human cell surface receptor will not bind anymore, and therefore virus will not be encapsulated inside the human cell again. So this molecule's job is go and prevent the binding of the receptor with this protein of the virus. Receptor of the human cell and a protein of the virus, if it is blocked by this molecule, it will become a very effective drug. But this molecule discovery, you have to test millions and millions of different compounds so that you can get a very specific molecule that can bind to this viral coat protein. If you can find that one, you have to then show that this molecule is not toxic to human cells. That is, if it binds only to virus, but not to any other proteins, or maybe it does not have any bad effect on human body. So human body should not have toxicity. It should bind only to the virus cell surface protein. And this process typically takes anywhere between 8 to 10 to 12 years. So 8 years you will have to wait before a new drug can be discovered. Now that is a very, very, very challenging time. So what we do to do a quick search is what we can make a hypothesis that there are about 2,500 to 3,000 drugs which are already known. If you take all diseases that are known, you take every disease on the planet that is known, and if you put all the drugs in a basket against these diseases, cancer, malaria, tuberculosis, take all these drugs, put them in a basket. There are about 2,500 to 3,000 of them. And now ask a question, can any of these drugs work against corona? So hypothesis is that these drugs are already known to be safe for human consumption. When we take those drugs, we don't see serious side effects of these drugs. And therefore, if any of these drugs is effective against corona, maybe you have a good solution. And that's what we call as repurposing. So those of you who have heard of repurposing drugs, that's exactly what it is. That a known drug taken to block coronavirus so that either it does not go into the body, or if it goes into the body, it does not replicate, or if it replicates, it cannot get out of the cells correctly. So if you can have drugs like that, I think that will be a wonderful thing. And CSIR is trying number of repurposing drugs. For example, there is a drug called favipiravir that is used against influenza that blocks the RNA multiplication of RNA in the cell. There's an enzyme called RNA-dependent RNA polymerase that multiplies the number of copies of the RNA of the virus in our cells. These drugs go and block that, and they actually stop making of the copies of RNA in our cell. So we are trying this particular drug called favipiravir, which has that particular action. Now, favipiravir is already a known drug against influenza, and therefore it is known to be safe for consumption. If it does the same activity, show the same activity on corona, I think we would have evolved a very, very good cure against corona. And this does not take too much time. This would typically take a few months, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, maybe at the most time like that. It will not take 7-8 years to evolve a new drug. And therefore, repurposing is our high priority. We are looking at repurposing of many molecules that we can actually do. We have to also remember that apart from new chemical entities and repurposing of drugs, there is a third very effective way of fighting diseases. And that we go back to our traditions and look at our traditional practices. You know, we have traditional medicinal practices such as those listed in Ayurveda or such as those listed in traditional Chinese medicine. These are very effective. They have evolved over a period of thousands of years. And they evolved because certain observations were made that extract of this plant does this, extract of the plant does this. And their effect on human body is well documented in our ancient texts. Why not we try to do that from modern science? Why can't we look at from modern science perspective and say that some plant extract can be used so that they increase our body's immunity? Why can't we use certain plant extract? They can fight infections and so on and so forth. And that's a very effective way. That's a very powerful way of fighting diseases. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to look at certain extracts of plants and trying to see their activity against coronavirus in CSIR. These are called as phytopharmaceutical. Phyto means taken from plant. Pharmaceutical means a drug which has a specific activity. In US, they call it as botanical because it is come from plant. And we are trying to do that with certain number of plants in CSIR. We are trying to see whether we can do that. We are also trying to do that from Ministry of Ayush, the Ayurveda formulations, whether we can use them. to fight corona. So these are the things that what CSIR is doing in terms of vaccines, diagnosis, and drugs. One thing that we should not forget is that the crisis is of that level, or the number of people who are coming down with corona is so large, we are now faced with a big challenge of how are we going to deal with such a large number of people. Hospitals, beds, things which protect the doctors, things which protect the nurses. How are we going to deal with that such a big number? And for that, what we have come up is multiple things. CSIR has come up with designs of buildings which can be very quickly constructed. Within 7 days, we can construct a 50-bedded hospital or a 100-bedded hospital. It won't take more than 7 days, 8 days, 10 days. So for example, in the cities where the numbers are increasing very rapidly, what CSIR can do is go to those cities and then make sure that we make these emergency hospitals there, which can have 50, 100 people who can be accommodated in those hospitals. Similarly, we have generated protective clothing for doctors. We have generated masks for doctors. We have generated ventilators which can be useful to patients. We have generated oxygen enrichment units from air, and so on and so forth. So a large number of technologies that CSIR has generated would go a long way in mitigating the disease, in trying to get over the disease of corona, right? So in CSIR, we are very proud, and I'm very proud that many of you have visited CSIR laboratories. I'm told that about 3 lakh students have visited CSIR laboratories in the past 1 year, 1 or 2 years. And you would have seen exactly how CSIR labs work. And we are very proud of what CSIR has actually done in this particular issue. So we actually look forward to do more. Many of you would know that CSIR today is the topmost science and technology organization in the country. Many international peers recognize that CSIR is the topmost research organization in the country, and all our scientists, all our students, and all our family members in CSIR have risen to the occasion, and they are fighting literally like warriors against this fight against corona. So we are very proud and very happy that I have been able to bring these achievements of CSIR in front of all of you. And dear friends, dear students, if you have any questions, I'll be most pleased to answer your questions. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you very much, sir, for your initial remarks and nicely explaining about COVID-19 and role CSIR is playing to address this pandemic. So there are a couple of questions I picked up from the chat box. So we'll go with the one by one. So the first question, you already explained the role of CSIR. It is playing towards detection, drug development, and hospital-assisted devices. So there is a question related to the vaccine development. So what is the status of vaccine development in India or in CSIR?
So vaccines, as I said, a number of vaccines, they are being tried. The MT virus, that is the inactivated virus, or the RNA encapsulated in something, or the surface protein of the virus itself, or the antibodies that are generated by recovered people. Any of these would be good vaccine candidates. And many of our vaccine companies in the country are trying these multiple approaches. What CSIR has taken an approach is CSIR has just funded a program to 2 academic institutions, NCCS Pune and IIT Indore, and a company in Hyderabad, Bharat Biotech, to get antibodies from people who are recovered, generate monoclonal antibodies, and see whether they are protective against corona or not. So this antibody approach is what CSIR has taken as a potential vaccine candidate.
Okay, sir. So there is another question from the participants. How technology can overcome challenges faced by our economy, society, as well as political structure?
See, what I would like to tell all of you is that the only way for any society to progress is by means of science and technology. All societies around the world, the most advanced societies what we see in the world, have reached that level because they adapted science and technology as the vehicle of change, as a vehicle of progress. The countries which we have not adopted science and technology as the vehicle of progress, we see what state they are. And let me give you an example. Around 1945, that about for 10 years period, 1945 to 1955, 1960, there are about 70 countries around the globe which became independent. Amongst all those countries, India was one country which adopted science and technology as a vehicle of progress. And compare India amongst many of those countries which became independent at that time and see what is the difference between India and others. And therefore, even today, when we are faced with a serious economic challenge, the only thing that will get out of the economic challenge, and we only think, if there are teachers in this particular seminar and the students, please note that the only vehicle that will get out of the economic problem that we have is adopt good science and technology practices, and the technology-led development is the only way to get out of all of this.
Absolutely, sir. So there is another question related to the lessons learned by the scientific community, education system, and we as a society from this COVID-19 pandemic. So what are the key lessons learned by these three groups?
See, the key lessons have been, scientists have always been talking that a very bad disease like Corona 2 have been around the corner. Although we did not know that it was going to be Corona 2, we always knew that a deadly infection is just around the corner. This is not the first time that the infection like this is sweeping the planet. Remember, 1918, 1919, what was called as the Spanish flu, killed about 12 million people in India. 1 million is 10 lakhs. 12 million is 1.2 crore people. 1.2 crore people were killed in India in 1918, 1919 because of Spanish flu. So diseases like this are common. They keep coming in cycles, and we must be prepared for these diseases. Just like this, scientists have always been talking about last 20 years that there is something called climate change. We are definitely seeing climate change around us, and we must be prepared for climate change, and we must slow down climate change as much as possible. So these are the lessons that scientists actually are telling all the policymakers. Remember, these are science and technology-led confirmations. They're the inferences drawn by science and technology, and they're not inferences told to you by any Baba or any astrologer or any person who does not understand science and technology. These are told to us by scientists who understand their work. And scientists can justify why they do actually make predictions like this. So the lesson learned is that listen to scientists, and scientists will tell you exactly how to behave for coming future, and how do we be prepared for calamities like this in future.
Rightly said, sir. And another thing, like in this such situation, the scientists, they have come as a savior. So how do you see this pandemic has changed the perception of scientists who are always known to work in the lab always in the lab and having less social life? How do you think their perception will change?
You know what I mean? The amount of press coverage that CSIR has got in last about 1 month, I don't think we had so much press coverage in last about 20 years. I mean, I'm just making a bold statement. Maybe I'm wrong, but CSIR, Department of Biotechnology, DRDO have been in news all the time of late. And that's because public believes that in a calamity like this, science and technology can provide very effective solutions. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. So the perception of scientists for public has changed dramatically, and I'm for good. I'm very happy that it has changed like this. Scientists have always worked for solutions for society. I mean, irrespective of what the problem is there in society, scientists have always worked for that. I mean, there are a number of things that we can actually think of in India as well, some good examples of scientific solutions, and we have actually worked on those. It's only thing that they are not visible to the society. Because of Corona, I am glad that many of these solutions have become visible to the society. And I would like to urge all the bright young kids there who are listening to me, please do take up science and technology as a very, very attractive career. You have a whole world of opportunities lying ahead of you.
Thank you, sir, for the valuable insight. So how do you think like students or the new generation of scientists can keep themselves ready to handle such unprecedented pandemic for the future?
See, as I said, pandemics are predicted. We knew that such a pandemic is coming. We did not know which kind of pandemic is coming. I mean, we did not know that Corona 2 virus is going to hit us. We knew that something is going to hit us always. I mean, last 20, 30 years, people have said that the next disease is just around the corner. But we do not know what disease that's going to be. And it turned out to be Corona 2. So we have to be prepared with our arsenals. We must understand our body very well. We must understand how our body develops immunity. We must understand how we can neutralize any disease that comes into being. So if you're actually able to do that, our understanding of biology, and living matter, living systems must improve. And that's one of the big lessons that we have learned, as that we should continuously keep addressing a very, very complex issue of understanding the living systems. And that's exactly what we should be doing in future as well.
Rightly said, sir. So there are a couple of questions related to COVID-19. Can we test coronavirus through X-ray of chest with any program, like probably China is doing like that? So is there any way we can do?
Indeed, you can, because as I said, the morphology of the lungs and alveolar spaces, they change in this. So an X-ray or a CT would actually show you different morphology and it can be tested. So people are indeed trying to do that, but that happens in somewhat later stage. So the people in the first few days when they're asymptomatic carriers, you don't notice that. But after a few days, you do start noticing different morphology of the lungs, and people are indeed trying to do that.
And so what about the person who are once infected from corona? Can they be infected again?
So currently, the limit of our understanding, what we say is that the person may not get second infection, but that's the current understanding. We really don't know at this stage whether a person can get infected second time or not, but we would like to believe that person will not be infected second time because there are antibodies in that person's body already. And if the second infection comes, that person can actually fight successfully the second infection. But we'll have to wait till we start seeing cases of second infection.
Okay, sir, there is another interesting question from one student. Can corona affect our food? And if we take that infected food, will it be killed by the stomach acid?
So as of now, there is no evidence that corona would get into the food and get into our body. It's always important to heat the food in any case. So heated anything actually gets rid of the virus and the bacteria, and therefore we should heat the food always and eat it. But as of now, there is no evidence that corona would infect the food and then get into our body through that route.
So I hope it's clear to our viewers, students. So there is another question related to how come China is able to lower the number of COVID-19 patients and control its spread?
Yes, so I think the most effective strategy, as I told you in the very beginning of my talk, is social isolation. You keep away from people. So as I said, that two people are always 6 feet away from each other. So even if one person is infected, the chance of the other person getting infected are very low. And China has actually put this very, very strongly. So the social isolation policy China has implemented extremely strongly. Second thing is wearing a mask. The mask also reduces your probability of getting infected. And washing this mask regularly with water, detergent, or something like that also helps. So China has implemented these policies very strictly, and they have helped. Why China? Even India numbers you see very proudly are much, much lower, right? I mean, I am seeing right now on my TV, the total number of cases in India is 67,152. That number is much, much lower compared to many of the advanced countries in the world, what we call quote unquote advanced countries. And it is because we have been actually in social lockdown for a long time. And social isolation actually works extremely well. So even when the social isolation is lifted, I would urge all of you to observe restraints and make sure that you don't come in close contact with other people who might potentially be infected.
Yes, sir. There is question another related to the relation between pollution and spread of coronavirus. Is there any relation between pollution and the spread of coronavirus?
Well, so pollution does not affect the infectivity of the virus, if that is a question. What we call as a virulence. Virulence essentially means how strong or weak is a virus to infect your body, right, in a very popular terms. Now, there is no evidence as of now that pollution has any effect on the virus. For example, in the most polluted area, would people be more prone to getting the infection? The answer is clearly we don't know. But a good aspect of it, and a lighter term, is that because of the lockdowns, all of a sudden we have started seeing blue sky and we have started seeing the stars in the sky. Because of the lockdown, that has had a very good impact on the environment, and the pollution levels have actually gone down quite significantly, and that is because of the lockdown and not because of the virus directly.
Yes, sir. So since most of the students, they are, because of lockdown, staying back at home, so there is a query, what is the role of classroom teaching in the coming era of online education, especially science education?
My speculation is that classroom teaching will continue, but the classroom teaching would be such that students sit away from each other. They are not in close in contact with each other. That's the way classroom teaching will continue. But online teaching is becoming now more and more powerful. And my speculation would be that the many people would actually do online classes in the coming academic year than ever before.
Yeah, there is another question from student side is, what would be the balance between fundamental research and application oriented research? Like those who are willing to choose science as a career. So what is the future of both fields?
You see, I mean, there are very seamless transition between fundamental research to application-oriented research. Any application or technology has a very strong science which backs it up. So unless there is a good science which backs it up, there will never be a good technology or good applications of that particular science. And there's a seamless transition between the two. And therefore, it is important that we have good science, and therefore also it's important that we have good application of science. So both these are equally important, and we should not have preference of one over another.
Yes, sir. Another thing which you mentioned about the antibodies for the treatment of COVID-19. So CSIR is working in that direction. Could you please explain how they are helpful to treat COVID-19?
Okay. So if you consider a person who has recovered from COVID, a person recovers when the person has generated a lot of antibodies in this person's body. You know, I mean, there's the specific B cells which generate these antibodies. And every B cell makes one kind of an antibody. And there are millions of B cells in our body, right? So all these B cells make millions of antibodies, different kinds of antibodies, what we call polyclonal. Because each cell, if you call as one clone, another cell as another clone, therefore you have polyclonal antibodies in the body. They circulate in our plasma. So if you actually extract plasma from a recovered patient and isolate antibodies, there will be polyclonal antibodies. But not all these antibodies are specifically neutralizing. They can't neutralize all of them equally effectively, the virus, right? Some do. So some of the antibodies which neutralize the virus very effectively, we would like to isolate these antibodies from the polyclonal antibodies and make sure that we use only those. These are called as the monoclonal antibodies. They're made only by those kind of specific B cells. And if you can actually identify these monoclonal antibodies, and then you have large number of monoclonal antibodies and inject into a person who might get infected by corona, then we have a very effective way of fighting the corona this thing. Because this person now has antibodies that can fight the incoming corona infection.
Sir, there is another question by some curious student about the RT-PCR test. So you told about RT-PCR test, like viral RNA is converted to DNA. Then how it can pair with the RNA probe in the last step?
How it can?
Pair with the RNA probe in the last step. So
no, yeah. RT-PCR, what happens is that you have a probe, and this probe can hybridize with any RNA which is complementary sequence to it, right? All requirement that is the sequence of this particular probe has to be complementary to this. When it joins together, complementary things will join together. And therefore, any RNA which is floating in solution, irrespective of where it comes from, if it hybridizes with that, it will light up. So in RT-PCR, actually, this will actually then start amplifying if it is probed with that. So that's exactly what happens in RT-PCR, that first you make a DNA out of it, and the DNA then you amplify. So that's what we do here.
Sir, there is also concern about using disinfectant and sanitizer in very excess amount nowadays, which has become a new normal. So how do you see their environmental and health effect, and how we can combat their impact through technology?
No, so disinfectants are here to stay. We would like to make sure that our chairs, tables, door handles, and other places, the taps on wash machines, they're not infected by any of these. So what we'd like to make sure is that whether we can keep disinfecting the places, and that's the new normal, and that's going to stay with us for a while. So we should not be afraid of disinfectants, and we should rather keep disinfecting places so that we reduce the probability of getting a corona infection through infected surfaces.
And you also mentioned that SARS-CoV-2 is similar to SARS, which came in 2002 and 2003. So can't we use the curing procedure which was used for SARS that time?
Yeah, but you have to remember that SARS-2 and SARS-1, SARS-CoV-2 and SARS-CoV-1 are not identical. There's significant differences between the two. And therefore, whatever vaccine or something was attempted on that, I don't think it would be equally effective on SARS-CoV-2. And therefore, we must treat SARS-CoV-2 as a separate disease altogether.
Okay, sir. So there are a lot of questions which are popping up in YouTube chat box, so we cannot take all of them. So last couple of questions. How much time it will take to normalize the study in India?
What normalization of the study? What does it mean?
How long it will take to get the situation normalized when the corona will end in India?
Oh my God, it's very difficult to predict, because we would like everybody to be safe. The government wants all the citizens to be safe, and therefore it's very good. The lockdown that has happened is very good, because it has not spread a disease like in some of the most advanced countries. Remember, countries what we consider very advanced countries like US, UK, Italy and all have seen a very bad fallout of the disease. Now it has a different aspect of it, that economy has actually suffered, which is very bad actually, that people have actually suffered because of this. But what we should do, we should find more innovative ways of people who have lost jobs to employ them. So the solution would be to employ people who have lost jobs through technology and science, and not simply lifting the lockdown up or something like that. So my personal opinion would be to empower people through technology so that they can start living their livelihood out of these technological interventions. So lockdown is very unpredictable how it will last. The current lockdown lasts, I believe, on 17th May. So we'll wait till 17th May, and we'll wait for the instructions of the government, what is going to happen at that time.
So, sir, there is a last question we are going to take because we have time restrictions. So the question is about plasma therapy and the mycobacterium therapy. So these are kind of very popular keywords among common people. So could you put some light on these two therapies which are being used?
So plasma is something like I already told you about antibodies, that in our plasma we have antibodies. And I told you about polyclonal antibodies because there are a large number of B cells in our plasma, and it keeps in each B cell secretes one kind of an antibody. So we can use plasma from a recovered person and inject that directly into a person who is affected. There is the plasma therapy. The mycobacterium that you talked about, there is a vaccine called BCG. All of us, dear friends here in this audience, have taken Mycobacterium bovis BCG on our first day that we are born. BCG is supposed to protect us from tuberculosis. It does indeed in the initial few years. But BCG also boosts the body's immune response. Similar to BCG, there is another bacterium called Mycobacterium W. Both are mycobacteria. Mycobacterium BCG is Mycobacterium bovis BCG. While Mycobacterium W is Mycobacterium indicus pranae. They both belong to Mycobacterium species, and both of them have very similar effect in boosting body's immunity. And therefore, we try to do that. If we use these vaccines, they may boost body's immunity, and by doing that, they may actually empower our body to fight a disease on its own. And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much, sir. I also would like to inform you that we are having around 600 students live with us, and lots of questions are coming up, but it's difficult to take. I think you have covered most of them, and mostly are the general question about when this virus will go, how long it will stay on this different surfaces. So now, on behalf of viewers and my own, I wish to thank Professor Shekhar Mande for joining us today and enlighten us on the various roles the technology is playing to tackle COVID-19. I'm sure this session has created curiosity among students and must have encouraged youngsters to embrace science and technology for the larger benefit of society. I also would like to inform that this webinar and discussion will be available on official channel of CSIR Jigyasa. So if you have joined late or missed the discussion at this time, you can follow it there. So we will meet again on 18th May with our new speaker and exciting topic to inculcate Jigyasa in you. And follow guidelines of your parents, the government guidelines, and make best use of this lockdown period by learning something new. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable